Chapter 1. The Quiet Before the Storm. Ron Bryant had always believed life was a series of choices, some deliberate, others accidental. Tonight, as he stirred the simmering sauce on the stove, he felt like he was standing at the intersection of both. The kitchen smelled of garlic and basil, the kind of aroma that made a home feel warm, safe, and full of promise. He wanted tonight to be perfect. Not extravagant, not flashy, just perfect in the way that mattered to him. The ring sat in his pocket, a small weight that felt heavier than it should. He had rehearsed the words a dozen times in his head, but now, as the clock ticked towards 7, his confidence wavered. What if she said no? What if she laughed? No, Rachel wasn't like that. She loved him. He knew she did. For years together wasn't a fluke. It was proof. Still, as he stirred the sauce, a memory crept in, uninvited, sharp as glass. Her laugh at the cafe. It was 2 years ago, a rainy afternoon when they ducked into a coffee shop near campus. Rachel had spotted him, the friend, and her face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. They hugged, long and easy, like they'd been waiting for that moment all day. Ron had stood there, holding 2 lattes, feeling like an extra in a scene he didn't belong to. They talked about professors, old parties, inside jokes Ron didn't understand. He'd smiled, nodded, pretended it didn't sting when they finished each other's sentences like it was normal. He shook the memory off, focusing on the sauce. Tonight wasn't about the past. Tonight was about the future. The sound of the front door opening pulled him from his thoughts. Rachel stepped inside, her cheeks flushed from the cold, her hair tucked into a messy bun that somehow looked intentional. She smiled when she saw him, and that smile, God, that smile, made his chest tighten. "Smells amazing," she said, dropping her bag on the couch. "You didn't have to go all out." "It's just pasta," Ron replied, trying to sound casual. "And maybe a little wine." She walked over, peeking into the pot. "You're spoiling me." "That's the plan," he said, forcing a grin. His heart thudded like a drum in his ears. Flashback. The first time he saw her cry. As he set the table, another memory surfaced. One he cherished and hated all at once. It was their first year together, when Rachel's grandmother passed away. She'd called him, voice trembling, and he'd driven across town without thinking. She was sitting on the floor of her apartment, knees pulled to her chest, tears streaking her face. Ron had held her for hours, whispering that it would be okay, even though he knew it wouldn't. That night, he realized he loved her. Not the easy kind of love, but the kind that digs deep, roots itself in your bones. He'd promised himself then, he would never let her feel alone again. So why, after 4 years, did he sometimes feel like he was the one left out in the cold? They ate by candlelight, the kind of cliché Ron usually avoided, but tonight felt like it deserved clichés. Rachel laughed at his jokes, teased him about his obsession with perfectly cooked noodles, and for a while, everything felt right. When the plates were cleared and the wine glasses half empty, Ron reached into his pocket. "Rachel," he began, his voice low, steady, or at least he hoped it sounded that way. "There's something I've been meaning to ask." Her eyes widened slightly, curiosity flickering across her face. "Okay." He placed the ring box on the table, flipping it open to reveal the simple diamond he'd spent months saving for. "Will you marry me?" For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. Then her lips parted, and she whispered, "Yes." Her smile was soft, almost shy, and Ron felt the tension drain from his body like water down a drain. "Yes?" he repeated, needing to hear it again. "Yes," she said louder, laughing now. "Of course yes." Relief washed over him, warm and dizzying. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she admired it under the candlelight, her eyes shining. They kissed, slow, tender, and for that moment, Ron believed he had everything he'd ever wanted. Mixed POV. Rachel. Later, when Ron was in the kitchen rinsing dishes, Rachel stared at the ring on her finger. It was beautiful, understated, exactly her style. He knew her well, better than anyone, maybe. So why did her chest feel tight, like the walls were closing in? She loved Ron. She did. He was kind, dependable, the kind of man who made life feel steady. But steady wasn't the same as thrilling. And lately, she'd been craving something else, something that made her pulse race and her thoughts scatter like leaves in the wind. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She glanced at it, then quickly looked toward the kitchen. Ron was humming softly, oblivious. She picked up the phone and read the message. "Thinking about you. Can't wait to see you tomorrow." Her stomach flipped. She typed back before she could stop herself. "Me too." Ron's POV. The weight of doubt. If there was one thing Ron hated, it was doubt. Doubt was a parasite. It burrowed deep, fed on insecurities, and grew until it consumed everything. He'd fought it before, in past relationships, and every time, it ended the same way, heartbreak. But Rachel wasn't like the others. She was different. She had to be. Still, there were moments, small, fleeting, when something felt off. Like when she laughed a little too hard at a text message. Or when she mentioned him, the college friend, casually, like it was nothing, but her tone carried a warmth Ron couldn't ignore. He hated that guy. Not openly, not in a way that would make him look jealous, but quietly, deep down where resentment brewed. They were just friends, Rachel said. And maybe that was true. Maybe Ron was imagining things. But then there were those little things, the shared glances, the inside jokes, the way they finished each other's sentences like they'd rehearsed it. Ron told himself to let it go. He wasn't insecure. He wasn't controlling. He was better than that. And besides, they were engaged now. That meant something. It had to. Flashback. The warning he ignored. He remembered the night his buddy Mark pulled him aside at a party. Ron, Mark said, lowering his voice. You ever notice how close Rachel is with that guy? The one from college. Ron had laughed it off. They're just friends. Mark shrugged. If you say so. But I've seen the way he looks at her. Ron had brushed it away, chalking it up to jealousy or gossip. But now, standing in the kitchen, that conversation echoed like a warning bell he'd silenced. Extended dialogue. The cracks begin to show. 2 weeks later, they were sitting on the couch, surrounded by swatches of fabric and color charts. Wedding planning was supposed to be fun, but Ron felt like he was drowning in details, centerpieces, seating charts, floral arrangements. Rachel seemed fine, though. More than fine. She was glowing, scrolling through Pinterest like it was her lifeline. Do you like this one? She asked, holding up a photo of a rustic centerpiece. It's nice, Ron said, distracted. He was staring at her phone, which buzzed again. She didn't check it right away, but when she did, her smile was quick, almost secretive. Who's that? He asked before he could stop himself. Just a friend, she said lightly, setting the phone down. Don't start. I'm not starting, Ron replied, forcing a laugh. Just curious. Well, don't be, she said, her tone sharper now. You're acting weird. I'm not acting weird. You are. The conversation died there, but the silence that followed was louder than any argument. The breaking point, it happened on a Sunday evening, quiet and ordinary. They'd spent hours comparing colors, and now Rachel was heading to the shower while Ron cleaned up. He stacked the swatches, wiped the table, tried to ignore the gnawing unease in his gut. Then her phone buzzed. Ron didn't mean to look. He really didn't. But the screen lit up, and the words burned into his brain like fire. Is he asleep yet? I can't wait to feel you. His breath caught. His hands went cold. The message was from him, the friend. The one Ron had tried so hard not to hate. For a moment, Ron just stared, his mind blank. Then something inside him snapped. Without thinking, he typed a reply. Come over now. He's gone for the night. See you soon. He hit send, powered down the phone, and placed it back on the table like nothing had happened. Then he walked to the bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag, and started packing. He didn't confront her. Didn't wait for explanations. He was done. Phone call. Before leaving, he dialed her father. The man answered on the second ring. Ron? Everything okay? No, Ron said flatly. The wedding's off. What? What? Ask your daughter, Ron replied. She's cheating on me, with her friend. That's ridiculous, her father said, his voice rising. Rachel would never. Believe what you want, Ron cut in. If you need proof, drive to the apartment. You'll see for yourself. He hung up before the man could respond. Ron didn't look back as he drove away. The city lights blurred in his rearview mirror, and with every mile, the weight in his chest grew heavier. He had given love an honest chance, his last chance, and it had ended like all the others. In flames. Chapter 2. Back to where it began. The highway stretched like an endless ribbon under the pale November sky. Ron gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his knuckles white against the leather. The duffel bag sat in the passenger seat, stuffed with clothes he barely remembered packing. He hadn't even taken his toothbrush. Not that it mattered. He wasn't planning on smiling much anytime soon. The city faded behind him, replaced by open fields and skeletal trees. The Midwest had a way of stripping life down to its bones. Quiet roads, faded barns, skies so wide they made you feel small. Ron had grown up here, in a town where everyone knew your name and your business. Leaving had felt like freedom once. Now, returning felt like defeat. He tried not to think about the apartment. About Rachel stepping out of the shower, humming softly, unaware that her life had just detonated. He wondered if she'd checked her phone yet. If she'd panicked when she saw his reply. If he was on his way over right now, grinning like he'd won some secret game. Ron's jaw tightened. He turned up the radio, but the music was just noise. His thoughts drowned it out. Flashback. The first goodbye. He remembered the day he left this town for college. His grandmother had stood on the porch, arms crossed, pretending not to cry. You'll do fine, she'd said, her voice brisk. Just don't forget where you came from. He hadn't. Not really. But somewhere along the way, he'd started believing that happiness lived in bigger cities, in shinier apartments, in relationships that looked good on Instagram. And now, he was crawling back, heart in pieces, wondering if maybe his grandmother had been right all along. The sign for Maple Hollow appeared like a ghost from the past. Population, 4,872. Same as before. Ron slowed as he passed the diner, the hardware store, the park where he'd played Little League. Nothing had changed. Except him. His grandmother's house sat at the end of a quiet street. White paint peeling in places, the porch swing creaking in the wind. He parked in the driveway and killed the engine. For a moment, he just sat there, staring at the front door, feeling 12 years old again. Then the door flew open. Ron Bryant. The voice was sharp, warm, and unmistakable. His grandmother barreled down the steps like a woman half her age, her gray hair pulled into a bun that defied gravity. She wore a flannel shirt, jeans, and sneakers that looked ready for a marathon. Grandma, Ron said, stepping out of the car. He barely had time to brace before she wrapped him in a hug that squeezed the air from his lungs. You look like hell, she said matter-of-factly, pulling back to study his face. Skinny, pale, eyes all sad like a basset hound. What happened? Ron opened his mouth, then closed it. How do you explain that your life imploded in the span of a text message? Long story, he muttered. Well, you can tell me over pie, she said, grabbing his arm and steering him toward the house. I just pulled one out of the oven. Apple, your favorite. The kitchen table confession. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and butter, and for the first time in hours, Ron felt something close to comfort. His grandmother sliced the pie with surgical precision, sliding a piece onto his plate before he could protest. Eat, she commanded. Then talk. Ron stared at the pie, then at her. The wedding's off. Her knife froze midair. Wedding. I was engaged, Ron said quietly. To Rachel. His grandmother blinked, then set the knife down. She cheated on me, Ron said, the words tasting bitter. With some guy she knew from college. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the tick of the old clock on the wall. Finally, his grandmother snorted. Well, damn, she said. That girl always looked too polished for my liking. Like one of those Instagram influencers who drink green juice and pretend they're happy. Ron almost laughed. Almost. Instead, he rubbed his face. I thought she loved me. Maybe she did, his grandmother said, pouring him a glass of milk. But love isn't just saying, I love you, and posting cute pictures. It's showing up. Every day, doing the little things that say, I see you. I appreciate you. If she couldn't do that, then good riddance. Ron stared at her, the truth of her words sinking in like stones. He'd spent years ignoring the red flags, convincing himself that doubt was weakness, that trusting her was strength. And now, he felt like a fool. Flashback. The gut feeling. He remembered the night he almost said something. They were at a bar with friends, and Rachel had been laughing with him, the friend, like they were the only two people in the room. Ron had felt the words rising in his throat. Do you like him? More than me. But he'd swallowed them, afraid of sounding insecure, afraid of losing her. Turns out, he lost her anyway. His grandmother reached across the table, her hand warm on his. You did the right thing, Ronnie. Walking away takes guts. Most men would have stayed, hoping she'd change. You didn't. Doesn't feel like guts, Ron muttered. Feels like failure. Failure's staying when you know you should leave, she said firmly. You left. That's strength. Ron nodded, though the ache in his chest didn't ease. He pushed the pie around his plate, appetite gone. Enter the past. Later that night, after unpacking in his old room, posters still on the walls, bedspread faded but familiar, Ron wandered into town. He needed air, space, something to quiet the storm in his head. The diner was buzzing with the usual crowd. Farmers, retirees, teenagers pretending they were too cool for Maple Hollow. Ron slid into a booth, ordered coffee, and stared out the window. Ron Bryant. The voice was soft, surprised. He turned and froze. It was her. Emily Carter. The girl he'd had a crush on in 8th grade. The one who made him forget how to speak every time she smiled. And she was smiling now, holding a tray of drinks, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that somehow made her look both older and exactly the same. Emily, Ron said, his throat dry. Wow. Hi. She laughed, setting the tray down at another table. I thought that was you. Back in town. Yeah, Ron said, fumbling for words. Just visiting. Her eyes softened. Well, welcome home. Ron managed to smile, but inside, his thoughts were chaos. Because if there was one thing he didn't expect tonight, it was this. A reminder that maybe, just maybe, life had a way of circling back. Closing scene. The spark of something new. As Emily walked away, Ron felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Not joy, not hope, just a flicker. A spark. Small, fragile, but real. He didn't know what it meant yet. Didn't know if he was ready for anything. But for the first time since leaving the apartment, he didn't feel completely broken. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. Chapter 3. The awkward spark. Ron woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of his grandmother humming in the kitchen. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then the faded wallpaper and creaky floorboards reminded him. Maple Hollow. Home. Or something like it. He dressed slowly, pulling on jeans and a flannel that smelled faintly of mothballs. His phone was silent. No missed calls, no texts. He didn't know if that was a relief or another kind of ache. Rachel was gone from his life, and maybe that was for the best. Still, the silence felt heavy. Downstairs, his grandmother was flipping pancakes like a woman on a mission. Morning, Ronnie, she said without looking up. You're meeting the gang today. Ron blinked. What gang? Your old friends, she said, sliding a pancake onto his plate. Mark called last night. Said they're all getting together at the diner. You're going. I didn't agree to that, Ron muttered. You didn't disagree either, she shot back. Eat. Then go. Ron sighed, but he ate. Because arguing with his grandmother was like arguing with gravity. You could try, but you'd lose. The diner reunion. The diner was buzzing when Ron walked in. Same cracked vinyl booths, same smell of coffee and fried eggs. He spotted them immediately. Mark, Jenna, Tyler, clustered around a corner booth like they owned the place. And then there was Emily, sitting with them, laughing at something Tyler said. Ron's stomach did a weird flip. Ronnie, Mark called, grinning like a kid. Look who crawled back from the big city. Ron managed to smile and slid into the booth. Hey guys. Jenna leaned forward, eyes bright. We heard about you know. Her voice softened. Sorry, Ron. Yeah, Tyler added. That sucks, man. Ron shrugged, trying to look unfazed. It is what it is. Emily's gaze met his then, warm, steady, like sunlight through a window. Glad you're here, she said simply. Ron felt his throat tighten. Yeah, me too. The conversation that turns, they talked about everything and nothing. Old teachers, town gossip, the fact that Maple Hollow still didn't have a decent coffee shop. Ron laughed more than he expected, though every laugh felt rusty, like a hinge that hadn't moved in years. Then Jenna grinned. So Ron, you gonna stick around for a while? Not sure, Ron said. Just figuring things out. Well, Tyler said, smirking, you should come to trivia night. Tomorrow. At Murphy's. Ron hesitated. I don't know. Come on, Mark said. It'll be fun. And Emily's the reigning champ. Emily laughed. Don't listen to him. I'm decent, that's all. Ron smiled awkwardly. Sounds good. Internal conflict. The weight of the past, as they talked, Ron's mind kept drifting. He remembered 8th grade, sitting behind Emily in math class, too shy to ask for a pencil. He remembered the way she laughed at his jokes when he managed to make them, and how his heart felt like it might explode every time she smiled. And now, she was here, inches away, looking at him like he wasn't invisible. But Ron wasn't that kid anymore. He was a man with scars, with trust issues that felt like chains. He didn't know if he could do this, start over, risk getting burned again. Grandma's wisdom and meddling. When Ron got home, his grandmother was waiting like a general debriefing a soldier. Well, she demanded. How was it? Fine, Ron said, dropping onto the couch. Fine. Her eyes narrowed. Did you talk to Emily? Ron froze. How do you? Small town, Ronnie, she said, smirking. I know everything. And I know you've had a crush on that girl since you were knee-high. Ron groaned. Grandma. Don't grandma me, she said, wagging a finger. You're not dead. You're not broken. You're just bruised. And bruises heal. Ron stared at her, words stuck in his throat. She made it sound so simple. But nothing about this felt simple. Trivia night. The setup. The next evening, Ron found himself at Murphy's, a bar that smelled like beer and nostalgia. The gang was already there, clustered around a table littered with menus and half-empty glasses. Emily waved him over, her smile easy, unforced. You made it, she said. Yeah, Ron replied, sliding into the seat beside her. His pulse was doing that stupid fast thing again. Trivia started, and Ron quickly realized two things. Emily was smart, and he was hopelessly distracted. Every time she leaned over to whisper an answer, her hair brushed his arm, and his brain short-circuited. Capital of Iceland? She murmured. Reykjavik, Ron said, surprising himself. She grinned. Nice. He felt absurdly proud, like he'd just solved world hunger. The friends stir the pot. Halfway through the game, Jenna leaned in, voice low but not low enough. So Ron, you and Emily make a good team. Ron nearly choked on his drink. What? Emily laughed, cheeks pink. Ignore her. But Tyler wasn't about to let it go. Seriously, man. You two should. Tyler. Emily cut in, her tone sharp enough to slice bread. Drop it. Ron stared at his glass, wishing he could disappear. His friends meant well, but their teasing felt like a spotlight he wasn't ready for. Closing scene. A moment alone. After trivia, as they walked out into the crisp night air, Emily fell into step beside him. Sorry about them, she said softly. They like to meddle. Ron smiled faintly. It's fine. They reached the parking lot, and for a moment, neither moved. The air was cold, their breath visible in the glow of the streetlights. You okay? Emily asked, her voice gentle. Ron hesitated. Then, for the first time in weeks, he told the truth. Not really. Emily nodded, her eyes kind. If you ever want to talk, I'm around. Ron swallowed hard. Thanks. She smiled, small, sincere, and walked to her car. Ron watched her go, his chest tight with something he couldn't name. Hope, fear, maybe both. Chapter 4. Pie, plans, and panic. Ron had barely finished his coffee when his grandmother launched her ambush. You're going to the Harvest Festival tonight, she announced, hands on her hips like a sheriff delivering a sentence. Ron blinked. What? The festival, she repeated. Pumpkin carving, hayrides, cider. It's good for the soul. I'm not really in the mood for Ron Bryant, she cut in, voice sharp enough to slice steel. You've been moping around here like a sad sack for 2 weeks. You need fresh air. And people. And maybe a certain someone. Ron froze. Grandma. She smirked. Emily's going. Ron groaned, dragging a hand down his face. You're not subtle. I'm not trying to be, she said cheerfully. Now eat your eggs, and put on something that doesn't look like you slept in it. Internal conflict. The fear that won't let go. Later, as Ron stood in front of the mirror, he felt ridiculous. It wasn't the flannel or the jeans. It was the knot in his chest, the voice whispering that he was setting himself up for another fall. He thought about Rachel. About the way she'd smiled when he slipped the ring on her finger. About the text that shattered everything. Trust had always been hard for him, but now, it felt impossible. Like trying to rebuild a house on quicksand. He stared at his reflection, jaw tight. You're not ready for this, the voice said. You'll get hurt again. But another voice, quieter, stubborn, whispered back. You can't hide forever. The festival, small-town chaos. Maple Hollow's Harvest Festival was exactly as Ron remembered. Strings of lights draped across the square, booths selling caramel apples and homemade crafts, kids running around with sticky fingers. The air smelled like cinnamon and wood smoke, and for a moment, Ron felt something loosen inside him. Then he saw Emily. She was standing near the cider stand, laughing with Jenna, her scarf bright against the autumn night. When she spotted Ron, Her smile widened. You made it, she said, walking over. I was starting to think you'd bail. Almost did, Ron admitted. Grandma threatened me. Emily laughed. Sounds like her. Before Ron could say more, Jenna swooped in like a hawk. Ron, Emily, hayride starts in 10. You two should go. Ron opened his mouth to protest, but Emily beat him to it. Sure, she said easily. Come on. The hayride. Close quarters and closer questions. The wagon was crowded, bales of hay scratchy under Ron's jeans. Emily sat beside him, her shoulder brushing his every time the wagon jolted. He tried to focus on the stars overhead, but his pulse had other ideas. So, Emily said after a while, her voice soft. How are you really? Ron hesitated. He could lie, say he was fine, say he was moving on. But something about her gaze made him want to tell the truth. Not great, he admitted. Feels like everything I thought I knew just blew up. Emily nodded, her expression gentle. I get that. Ron glanced at her. You do? She smiled faintly. I've been there. Different circumstances, but yeah. Trust is hard after something like that. Ron swallowed. How do you fix it? Emily looked out at the dark fields, her breath visible in the cold. You don't, not all at once. You just take small steps. Let people surprise you. Ron stared at her profile, the curve of her jaw in the moonlight. He wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to. Grandma's interference, because of course, when Ron got home, his grandmother was waiting on the porch like a cat who'd caught a canary. Well, she demanded. Did you talk? Did you laugh? Did you hold hands? Grandma, Ron groaned. It was a hayride, not a rom-com. She waved a hand. Details. Did you like her? Ron hesitated. Yeah, I did. Her grin was pure mischief. Good. Because I invited her to Sunday dinner. Ron's head snapped up. You what? She said yes. His grandmother said smugly. So wear a clean shirt. Ron stared at her, half horrified, half amused. You're unbelievable. I'm effective, she said, winking. Now go get some sleep. You've got a big day. Internal conflict. The spiral before sleep. That night, Ron lay in bed staring at the ceiling. He thought about Emily, her laugh, her kindness, the way she didn't push when he hesitated. And he thought about Rachel, about betrayal, about the part of him that still flinched at the idea of trusting anyone again. He wanted to move forward. He wanted to believe he could. But the fear was a living thing, coiled in his chest, whispering that history repeats itself. He closed his eyes, exhausted. Tomorrow would come whether he was ready or not. Sunday dinner. The test. The smell of roast chicken filled the house, mingling with the scent of fresh bread. Ron stood in the kitchen, nerves jangling like loose wires. His grandmother was humming, setting the table with the precision of a general preparing for battle. When the doorbell rang, Ron's stomach dropped. Emily stepped inside, cheeks pink from the cold, carrying a pie. Apple, she said, smiling. Figured it might earn me points. Lots of points, Grandma said, taking the pie. Come in, honey. Ron managed to smile. Hey, hey, Emily replied, her eyes warm. Dinner was surprisingly easy. Grandma told stories. Emily laughed in all the right places, and Ron found himself relaxing, just a little, until Grandma dropped the bomb. So, Emily, she said sweetly, you seeing anyone? Ron nearly choked on his water. Emily blinked, then smiled. No. Grandma beamed. Good. Ron singled too. Grandma, Ron hissed, mortified. Emily laughed, cheeks pink. Noted. Closing scene. A doorway and a decision. After dinner, Ron walked Emily to her car. The night was quiet, stars scattered like diamonds across the sky. Sorry about her, Ron said, shoving his hands in his pockets. She's persistent. Emily smiled. I like her. Ron hesitated. I'll like you. The words hung between them, fragile and real. Emily's smile softened. I like you too. For a moment, Ron felt the fear loosen its grip. Just a little. Enough to breathe. See you soon? She asked. Ron nodded. Yeah, see you soon. As she drove away, Ron stood in the cold, heart pounding. Not with dread this time, but with something that felt dangerously close to hope. Chapter 5. Shadows from the Past. The week after Sunday dinner felt like a fragile truce between Ron and his own doubts. He'd started running again, just short loops around Maple Hollows Park, trying to clear his head. He even found himself smiling at small things. Grandma humming while baking, Emily's texts about random trivia facts, the way the town smelled like wood smoke and fallen leaves. For the first time in months, Ron felt like maybe, just maybe, he was moving forward. Then the message came. The text that shakes everything. It was late afternoon. Ron sitting on the porch with a mug of coffee, scrolling through news headlines he barely absorbed. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and froze. Unknown number. Funny seeing you back in town. Does Emily know you're still hung up on Rachel? Ron stared at the words, his stomach dropping like a stone. He read them again, slower this time, hoping they'd make sense. They didn't. They just burned. He typed back before he could think. Who is this? No reply. Internal spiral. Old wounds, new doubts. Ron's pulse hammered as he set the phone down. The message was poison, short, sharp, and perfectly aimed. He wasn't hung up on Rachel. Was he? No. He'd left. He'd walked away. But the fact that someone thought otherwise, that someone might tell Emily. His chest tightened. He thought about her laugh, her kindness, the way she'd said see you soon like it meant something. And now? One anonymous text threatened to unravel it all. Grandma notices, because she always does. Why do you look like someone stole your dog? Grandma's voice cut through his thoughts. She stood in the doorway, hands on her hips, eyes sharp. Ron hesitated. It's nothing. Liar, she said flatly. Spit it out. Ron sighed, holding up the phone. Got a text. From someone saying, Emily should know I'm still hung up on Rachel. Grandma snorted. Well, that's nonsense. Is it? Ron muttered. Because maybe I am. Maybe I'm just using Emily to feel better. Grandma marched over, snatched the phone, and read the message. Then she tossed it back like it was trash. That's someone stirring the pot. Probably bored. Ignore it. I can't, Ron said quietly. What if Emily sees it? What if she thinks? What if pigs fly? Grandma shot back. You like that girl. She likes you. End of story. Ron wished he could believe her. But the doubt was back, coiled tight in his chest. The rumor mill turns. By evening, the text wasn't just a text. It was a rumor. Ron heard it at Murphy's, where he'd gone to grab a burger and clear his head. Two guys at the bar were talking, voices low but not low enough. Heard he came back cause he couldn't get over his ex. Ron stiffened. He didn't know if they meant him, but it felt like they did. And in a town like Maple Hollow, rumors spread faster than wildfire. He left before finishing his drink. Emily calls. That night, his phone buzzed again. This time it was Emily. Hey, can we talk? Ron stared at the screen, dread pooling in his gut. He typed back. Sure. Minutes later, her car pulled into the driveway. Ron met her on the porch, heart pounding. The conversation that hurts. Emily stood there, hands shoved in her jacket pockets, eyes steady. I heard something, she said without preamble. About you. About Rachel. Ron swallowed hard. What did you hear? That you're still in love with her, Emily said softly. That you came back because you couldn't handle seeing her with someone else. Ron felt the words like a punch. That's not true. Then tell me what is, Emily said, her voice calm but firm. Ron dragged a hand through his hair. I left because she cheated on me. Because I couldn't stay and pretend everything was fine. I'm not hung up on her, Emily. I'm angry, hurt, but I don't want her back. Emily studied him for a long moment. Then why does it feel like you're still looking over your shoulder? Ron froze. Because she was right. He was. Every step forward felt like a glance backward, like a shadow he couldn't shake. I don't know, he admitted. I'm trying. Emily's expression softened, but her voice stayed steady. I like you, Ron, but I need to know you're here for me, not as a distraction. Ron's throat tightened. I want to be. Then figure it out, she said gently. Because I can't do this if you're half in and half out. She turned, walked to her car, and drove away. Ron stood in the cold, the sound of her engine fading like hope slipping through his fingers. Grandma's tough love? Inside, Grandma was waiting. She left? She asked. Ron nodded, sinking onto the couch. She thinks I'm not over Rachel. Well, Grandma said, folding her arms. Are you? Ron stared at the floor. I don't know. Grandma sighed, sitting beside him. Listen, Ronnie, you've been burned. That kind of hurt doesn't vanish overnight. But if you keep letting fear drive the bus, you'll never get anywhere. Ron looked at her, eyes raw. What if I can't trust anyone again? Then you'll be lonely, Grandma said bluntly. And miserable. And probably living in my basement forever. Ron almost laughed. Almost. She squeezed his hand. You don't have to trust the whole world. Just one person. And maybe that person deserves a chance. Closing scene. A choice looms. Later, in his room, Ron stared at his phone. Emily's last words echoed in his head. Figure it out. He wanted to text her, to explain, to promise he'd try. But promises felt heavy now, like chains. He set the phone down and looked out the window. The night was quiet. Stars scattered across the sky. Somewhere out there, Emily was wondering if he was worth the risk. And Ron. He was wondering the same thing. Chapter 6. The Leap. Ron stood in front of the mirror, staring at his reflection like it belonged to someone else. His hair was a mess, his shirt wrinkled, and his eyes carried the weight of too many sleepless nights. He'd spent weeks circling the same thoughts, the same fears, like a moth trapped in a jar. But tonight, he was done circling. He was going to do something. Something bold. Something that terrified him. Because if he didn't, he'd spend the rest of his life wondering what could have been. Grandma's push, downstairs, his grandmother was waiting like a coach before the big game. She had that look. The one that said she knew exactly what he was planning and approved wholeheartedly. You're going to see her, she said, not a question. Ron sighed. Yeah. Good, she said, handing him a plate of cookies wrapped in foil. Take these. Everyone likes cookies. Grandma, this isn't, Ronnie, she cut in, her tone sharp. You've been moping around here like a sad puppy. That girl puts a smile on your face. Go tell her how you feel. Ron stared at the cookies, then at her. What if she says no? His grandmother shrugged. Then you eat the cookies yourself and move on. But at least you'll know. Ron almost laughed. Almost. Instead, he grabbed the plate and his jacket, heart pounding like a drum. The drive, the streets of Maple Hollow were quiet, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. Ron's hands gripped the steering wheel, his mind a storm of what-ifs. What if she laughed? What if she said she wasn't interested? What if this ruined everything? The fragile friendship they'd built, the easy conversations, the spark he wasn't sure he imagined. But then he thought about the alternative, doing nothing, staying silent, watching her life move on without him. That was worse. So much worse. Emily's house. Her house was small, cozy, with a porch light that glowed like a beacon. Ron parked at the curb and sat there for a full minute, staring at the door, willing himself to move. Finally, he did. He walked up the steps, cookies in hand, and knocked before he could lose his nerve. The door opened, and there she was, Emily, in jeans and a soft sweater, her hair pulled back, her face lighting up when she saw him. "Ron," she said, surprised but smiling. "Hey, hey," he said, his voice rough. I brought cookies." Her laugh was warm, easy. "Come in." The conversation before the storm. Her living room was simple. Bookshelves, a worn couch, a framed photo of her family on the wall. Ron sat on the edge of the couch, cookies on the coffee table, his heart hammering like it wanted out. Emily poured 2 glasses of water and sat across from him. "So, what's up?" Ron swallowed hard. "I needed to talk to you." Her brows lifted slightly. "Okay." He stared at his hands, then at her. "Emily, these past few weeks, you've been the one good thing. The one thing that makes me feel like I'm not completely broken." Her eyes softened. "Ron, I know I'm a mess," he said quickly. "I know I just got out of something awful, and maybe this is too soon, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel this." Emily was silent, her expression unreadable. Ron's pulse roared in his ears. "I like you," he said finally, the words tumbling out. "I've liked you since 8th grade, and I thought that was just some stupid crush, but it's not. It never was. And if you don't feel the same, that's okay. I just needed you to know." Emily's response, for a moment. The room was so quiet Ron could hear the tick of the clock on the wall. Emily stared at him, her lips parted, her eyes wide. Then she laughed softly, not mocking, not cruel, just surprised. "Ron," she said, shaking her head. "You have the worst timing." His stomach dropped. "Right? Yeah, I shouldn't have." "No," she said quickly, leaning forward. "I mean, I like you too." Ron froze. "You what?" "I like you," she repeated, her smile small but real. "I've always liked you. But you were shy, and then you left, and life happened." Ron stared at her, words stuck in his throat. "So what now?" Emily's gaze held his, steady and sure. "Now we take it slow. You've been through a lot. I'm not looking for a rebound, and I don't think you are either." "No," Ron said, his voice firm. "I'm not." "Good," she said, her smile widening. "Then let's see where this goes." The moment that changes everything. Ron felt something break open inside him. Something heavy, something dark. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt light. He laughed, shaky but real. "So cookies." Emily grinned. "Cookies." They ate cookies on her couch, talking about everything and nothing. And for the first time since his world fell apart, Ron believed it might come together again. Closing scene. Grandma's victory. Later, when Ron walked back into his grandmother's kitchen, she was waiting with that smug look only grandmothers can pull off. "Well?" she asked. Ron smiled, the kind of smile that felt like sunlight. She said yes. His grandmother nodded, satisfied. "Told you. Cookies fix everything." Ron laughed, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't hurt. Chapter 7. Cracks in the glass. Winter had settled over Maple Hollow like a heavy quilt, muffling sound and slowing life to a crawl. Snow lined the streets, and the diner's windows glowed warm against the gray sky. Ron sat in his truck outside Murphy's, staring at the steering wheel, trying to calm the storm in his chest. He and Emily had been seeing each other for 2 months now. Slow, careful steps towards something that felt real. It wasn't official, not yet, but everyone in town treated them like it was. His grandmother teased him daily. His friends winked and nudged. And Ron, he was happy, or at least he thought he was. Until last night. The trigger, it started with a text. "Emily, can't make it tonight. Something came up." "Ron, everything okay?" "Emily, yeah, just busy." That was it. No explanation, no details. Just busy. Ron told himself not to overthink it, but the old doubts clawed their way back. He remembered Rachel's vague excuses, the way busy became a shield for secrets. He hated that his brain went there, but it did. And then, this morning, he saw a photo on social media. Emily at a coffee shop with a guy he didn't recognize. Laughing, leaning in close. The caption read, "Catching up with an old friend." Ron's stomach dropped. He didn't want to be that guy, the jealous, insecure one, but the image burned in his mind. He tried to shake it off, but by the time Emily texted, "Want to grab lunch?" his reply was short. "Sure." Murphy's. The confrontation. Emily was already at the table when Ron walked in, her smile bright, easy. "Hey, you okay?" Ron slid into the seat, forcing a smile. "Yeah, fine." She tilted her head. "You don't look fine." "I'm good," he said, picking up the menu like it was a lifeline. Emily studied him for a moment, then set her phone down. "Ron, talk to me." He hesitated, words tangling in his throat. Finally, he blurted, "Who was the guy?" Her brows knit. "What guy?" "The one in the photo," Ron said, his voice sharper than he intended. "At the coffee shop." Emily blinked, then laughed softly. "Oh, that was Josh. We went to college together. He's in town for a few days." Ron nodded, jaw tight. "You didn't mention that." "I didn't think it mattered," she said, her tone calm but cool. "It was just coffee." "Just coffee," Ron repeated, the words tasting bitter. "Right." Emily's eyes narrowed. "What's going on?" Ron exhaled, frustration spilling out. "I've been here before, Emily. With Rachel. The secrets, the excuses, whoa." Emily held up a hand. "I'm not Rachel." "I know," Ron said quickly. "But, no," she cut in, her voice firm. You don't get to compare me to her every time you feel insecure. Ron flinched. The word hit like a slap. I'm not insecure. Then what is this? Emily asked, gesturing between them. Because it feels like you don't trust me. Internal conflict. Ron's breaking point. Ron stared at the table, shame and anger warring inside him. He hated this. Hated how easily old wounds bled into new ones. He wanted to trust her. He really did. But trust felt like walking a tightrope over fire, and his balance was shot. I'm trying, he said finally, his voice low. But it's hard. Emily's expression softened, but her eyes stayed guarded. I get that. I do. But if this is going to work, you can't punish me for someone else's mistakes. Ron nodded, throat tight. You're right. Silence stretched, heavy and awkward. The waitress appeared, took their order, and left. Neither spoke until the food arrived, and even then, the conversation was thin, weather, work, nothing that mattered. Emily's POV. The other side. Later, as Emily drove home, her hands gripped the steering wheel like it might steady her thoughts. She liked Ron, more than liked him. He was kind, steady, the kind of man who made her feel safe. But today? Today felt like a crack in the glass. She understood his past. She knew betrayal leaves scars. But she wasn't Rachel, and she refused to live in someone else's shadow. If Ron couldn't see that, if he couldn't trust her, then what were they doing? Her phone buzzed. A text from Ron. Can we talk later? Emily stared at the screen, then typed back. Sure. Grandma's intervention. Ron was sulking on the porch when his grandmother appeared, armed with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. You look like someone stole your dog, she said, handing him a mug. What happened? Ron sighed. Emily and I had a fight. About what? He hesitated. She had coffee with a guy. His grandmother stared at him, then burst out laughing. Lord have mercy, Ronnie. Coffee. That's what's got you twisted. It's not just coffee, Ron muttered. It's your baggage, she said bluntly. You're dragging it around like a suitcase full of bricks. And if you're not careful, you're gonna crush that girl under it. Ron winced. I'm trying. Try harder, she said, her tone softening. She's not Rachel. Don't make her pay for Rachel's sins. Ron nodded, guilt gnawing at him. His grandmother patted his knee. Go fix it. And take a pie. Pie fixes everything. The apology. That evening, Ron drove to Emily's house, a pie on the passenger seat like a peace offering. His stomach churned as he knocked on the door. Emily opened it, her expression unreadable. Hey, Ron said, holding up the pie. Truce. Her lips twitched. Come in. They sat on the couch, the pie untouched between them. Ron took a breath. I'm sorry. For today? For all of it? Emily nodded slowly. Thank you. I know I've got baggage, Ron said. And I hate that it spills over. I don't want to lose you because I can't let go of the past. Emily's eyes softened. I don't want that either. But I need honesty, Ron. If something bothers you, talk to me. Don't let it fester. I will, he promised. No more festering. She smiled faintly. Good. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Emily nudged the pie. You really think pie fixes everything? Ron grinned. Worth a shot. Closing scene. A fragile piece. They ate pie in the quiet glow of the living room. Laughter slowly replacing tension. The crack in the glass was still there, faint but real. But maybe, just maybe, it could be mended. Ron knew this was their first real test, and it wouldn't be the last. But as Emily leaned against his shoulder, warm and steady, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Chapter 8. When the ground shifts, the first snow of December dusted Maple Hollow like powdered sugar, softening the edges of everything. Ron stood at the kitchen window, watching flakes drift lazily past the glass, coffee cooling in his hands. For the first time in weeks, he felt steady. Not whole, not healed, but steady enough to breathe without the weight crushing his chest. Emily had agreed to meet him later that week. After the fallout from the rumor, they talked, really talked, and Ron had promised to take things slow, to be honest about where he was. She'd smiled, said that was all she needed. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Then the phone rang. The call that changes everything, Grandma answered, her voice brisk, as always. Hello? Oh. Her tone shifted, sharp with alarm. What happened? Ron turned, heart thudding. Grandma. She held up a hand, listening, her face pale. We'll be there. Right away. She hung up and looked at Ron, eyes wide. It's your dad, she said. Heart attack. He's at County General. Ron felt the world tilt. What? Is he? He's alive, Grandma said quickly. But it's bad. We need to go. The drive. Silence and storms. The drive to the hospital was a blur of gray skies and icy roads. Ron gripped the steering wheel, his mind a chaos of memories. His dad teaching him to throw a baseball. His dad yelling at him for denting the truck. His dad hugging him awkwardly at graduation. They hadn't been close in years, not since Ron left for college and never really came back. Calls were rare, visits rarer. And now? Now he might lose him. Grandma sat beside him, silent for once, her hands clenched in her lap. The weight of her worry filled the car like smoke. At County General, the hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. Ron followed Grandma through the maze of corridors until they reached the ICU. A nurse met them, her expression professional but kind. He's stable for now, she said. We've got him on monitors. The next 24 hours are critical. Ron nodded numbly, his throat tight. Can we see him? Briefly, the nurse said. He needs rest. The room where time stops. Ron stepped inside and froze. His father lay in the bed, pale and still, tubes and wires snaking around him like vines. Machines beeped softly, a cruel reminder that life was fragile. Dad, Ron whispered, moving closer. He didn't know what to say. I'm sorry. I love you. Why didn't we try harder? The words tangled in his chest. His father's eyes fluttered open, hazy but focused enough to find Ron. You came, he rasped. Of course I did, Ron said, voice breaking. His dad tried to smile. Don't waste time, son. Fix what matters. Ron swallowed hard. I will. The nurse ushered them out after a few minutes, and Ron felt like he'd left a piece of himself behind in that sterile room. Internal conflict, old regrets, new fears. Back in the waiting area, Ron sat with his head in his hands. He thought about all the years he'd spent chasing something: success, love, escape, while letting family slip through his fingers. He thought about Emily, about how he'd almost sabotaged something good because he was afraid. And now, life was reminding him how short the road really was. Grandma touched his shoulder. He's tough, she said softly. Like you. Ron shook his head. I don't feel tough. You're here, she said. That's what matters. Emily shows up. Ron didn't expect her. But an hour later, Emily walked into the waiting room, her coat dusted with snow, her eyes full of concern. Mark told me, she said. I came as soon as I could. Ron stared at her, stunned. You didn't have to. I wanted to, she said simply. Something in Ron cracked then, not in a bad way, but in the way ice cracks before spring. He stood, and she hugged him, warm and steady, and for the first time all day, he felt like he could breathe. The conversation that matters, they sat together, the hum of hospital machines in the background. Ron told her everything. His fear, his guilt, the way he felt like he'd wasted years. Emily listened, her hand resting lightly on his. You can't change the past, she said gently. But you can choose what you do now. Ron looked at her, really looked, and realized she wasn't just talking about his dad. She was talking about them. I want to choose right, he said quietly. Then start, she replied. Grandma's quiet wisdom. Later, when Emily stepped out to grab coffee, Grandma leaned over. She's a keeper, she said. Ron smiled faintly. I know. Then don't let fear make you stupid, Grandma said, her tone sharp but her eyes soft. Life's short, Ronnie. Too short for second-guessing. Ron nodded, the truth of her words settling deep. He'd spent so long waiting for certainty, for guarantees. But maybe love wasn't about guarantees. Maybe it was about showing up, like Emily had tonight. Like he had for his dad. Closing scene. A promise in the dark, that night. As Ron sat by his father's bed, listening to the steady beep of the monitors, he made two promises. One to the man lying there, and one to himself. He would fix what mattered. He would stop running from fear. And he would take the risk, even if it scared him half to death. Because some things were worth it. Chapter 9. The weight lifts. The steady beep of the heart monitor had become a strange kind of comfort. For 3 days, Ron sat by his father's bed, watching numbers flicker on screens, listening to nurses speak in calm, clipped tones. Each hour felt like a coin toss. Hope on one side, fear on the other. Then, on the 4th morning, the doctor smiled. He's improving, she said. We'll move him out of ICU today. Ron exhaled so hard his chest ached. Grandma squeezed his hand, her eyes bright with relief. For the first time in days, the air didn't feel like glass. The conversation that heals. Later, when his father was settled in a regular room, Ron sat beside him, the hum of machines softer now. His dad looked tired but stronger, color creeping back into his cheeks. You scared me, Ron said quietly. His father chuckled, a weak sound but real. Scared myself too. Ron hesitated, then spoke the words that had been clawing at him since the call. I'm sorry. For not being around. For letting so much time slip. His dad's gaze softened. Life gets busy. I get it. But don't waste what's left, son. Ron nodded, throat tight. I won't. They sat in silence after that, but it wasn't heavy. It was the kind of silence that feels like a bridge instead of a wall. Emily returns. That evening, Emily walked into the hospital room, carrying a bag of takeout, and a smile that made Ron's chest ache in a good way. Thought you could use real food, she said, setting the bag on the table. Hospital sandwiches are a crime. Ron grinned. You're a lifesaver. His dad raised an eyebrow. And who's this? Emily laughed, cheeks pink. Just a friend. Ron met her eyes, something unspoken passing between them. For now, he thought. But maybe not for long. Grandma's exit line. When Grandma left to grab coffee, she whispered in Ron's ear, don't blow this, Ronnie. Then she winked and sailed out like a queen. Emily laughed. She's something. She's relentless, Ron said, smiling. But she's right. Emily tilted her head. Right about what? Ron swallowed hard. About me. Not wanting to blow this. The heart to heart. They sat in the hospital cafeteria later, the smell of burnt coffee and disinfectant lingering in the air. Ron stared at his hands, then at Emily. I've been scared, he admitted. Scared of trusting again. Scared of getting hurt. But these last few days, watching my dad, thinking about everything I almost lost, I realized something. Emily's eyes were steady. What? That fear doesn't protect you, Ron said softly. It just keeps you from living. And I don't want to waste any more time. Emily's breath caught, just slightly. Ron, I like you, he said, voice raw but sure. More than I've let myself admit. And I want to try. For real. No half in, half out. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Emily smiled. a slow, warm smile that felt like sunrise. I like you too, she said, and I'm willing to try, as long as we're honest. Deal, Ron said, his chest loosening like a knot finally undone. The first kiss, earned, not rushed. They walked out into the cold night, snow crunching under their boots. The parking lot was quiet, stars scattered across the sky like promises. Ron stopped by her car, heart pounding. Emily. She turned, eyes bright in the glow of the streetlight. Yeah. He stepped closer, slow, giving her space to pull back if she wanted. She didn't. When their lips met, it wasn't fireworks. It was something steadier, deeper. A kiss that said, I'm here. I'm trying. I choose you. When they pulled apart, Emily smiled. Took you long enough. Ron laughed, breathless. Worth the wait. Closing scene. A future unfolding. Later, as Ron drove home, the world outside was quiet, blanketed in snow. His dad was safe. His grandmother was probably baking a victory pie. And Emily was more than a spark now. She was a chance, a real one. For the first time in months, Ron felt like the ground beneath him wasn't shifting anymore. It was solid, and he was ready to stand on it. Epilogue. The weight and the light. Snow fell in lazy spirals, blanketing Maple Hollow in a hush that felt almost sacred. Ron stood outside the diner, hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets, watching the flakes settle on the cracked sidewalk. The neon sign flickered behind him, casting a faint glow on the snow. He'd come here for coffee, but what he really wanted was something harder to find. Peace. The door creaked open, and Emily stepped out, her scarf snug around her neck, cheeks flushed from the warmth inside. She spotted him instantly, her smile soft but sure. Hey, she said, voice carrying easily in the quiet. You hiding out here? Ron chuckled, though it sounded tired even to his own ears. Just thinking. Emily tilted her head, eyes curious. Dangerous habit. Yeah, Ron said, his breath curling in the cold. Seems to be all I do lately. She walked closer, boots crunching on the thin layer of snow. Mind if I join you? Not at all. They stood side by side, watching cars glide down Main Street, their headlights slicing through the dusk. The town was quiet, the kind of quiet Ron used to hate, but now found oddly comforting. It was honest. No pretenses. No noise to drown out the truth. The first crack in the silence, Emily broke it gently. You've been through a lot. Ron let out a breath that felt heavier than the cold. Feels like I've been through a war. Her eyes softened. I'm sorry, Ron. He shrugged, staring at the snow. Not your fault. No, she said, her voice steady. But, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm here. Ron looked at her then, really looked. The way her hair caught the light, the way her eyes didn't flinch from his. She wasn't pitying him. She was offering something else, something steady, something real. I don't even know where to start, he admitted. Start anywhere, Emily said. Or don't. We can just stand here and freeze together. Ron laughed, the sound rusty but real. You always were good at making things less complicated. Emily smiled. And you were always good at overthinking. He grinned despite himself. Still am. Walking toward the past, and maybe the future. They started walking toward the park, snow crunching underfoot. The swings were dusted white, the benches empty, the whole place looking like a photograph from another life. I keep wondering, Ron said quietly, if I missed something. If there was a sign I should have seen. Emily glanced at him. You mean with her? Yeah. He swallowed hard. I ignored my gut. Told myself I was being paranoid. Turns out, I wasn't. Emily was silent for a moment, then said, trusting someone isn't a flaw, Ron. It's brave. Doesn't feel brave, he muttered. Feels stupid. It's not, she said firmly. You gave her the benefit of the doubt. That says more about you than it does about her. Ron stopped walking, the weight of her words sinking in like stones. You really think that? I know that, Emily said, meeting his gaze. You're not broken, Ron. You're just bruised. He stared at her, the cold forgotten. That sounds familiar. Emily smiled. Your grandmother might have mentioned it. Ron laughed, shaking his head. Figures, the bench and the truth. They sat on a bench, snowflakes settling on their coats. For a while, they just talked, about nothing and everything. Childhood memories. The diner's terrible coffee. How Maple Hollow never changes. Then Emily said something that stuck. You know what I've learned? Love isn't about grand gestures. It's the little things. The everyday stuff. Like remembering how you take your coffee. Or noticing when you've had a bad day. Ron nodded slowly. My grandma said something like that. She's a smart woman, Emily said, smiling. She is, Ron agreed. Smarter than me, most days. Emily nudged his shoulder lightly. You're doing okay. Ron looked at her, really looked. And for the first time in months, he believed it. Deeper reflections, hope and healing. Later that night, lying in his old bed beneath the faded quilt his grandmother had sewn years ago, Ron stared at the ceiling. The house was quiet except for the hum of the furnace and the occasional creak of settling wood. Outside, snow whispered against the windows, soft and relentless. He thought about the past few weeks, the proposal, the laughter, the plans that had felt so certain. And then the text message, sharp as a blade, cutting through everything he believed. For days, he'd carried that wound like proof that love was a gamble he'd never win. But tonight felt different. Emily's words echoed in his mind. You're not broken. You're just bruised. Bruises heal. Slowly, yes. Sometimes painfully. But they heal. Ron realized he'd been measuring his worth by the weight of his losses, by the people who walked away. He'd convinced himself that heartbreak was permanent, that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. But maybe healing wasn't about erasing scars. Maybe it was about learning to live with them and still choosing to hope. Hope wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself with fireworks or grand gestures. It was quiet, like snow falling in the dark. It was the small, stubborn belief that tomorrow could be better than today. That someone might see you, not the polished version, not the perfect mask, but the real you, and stay. For the first time in months, Ron felt that flicker inside him. Fragile, yes, but real. He thought about Emily's smile, about the way she listened without judgment, about how her presence felt like sunlight after a long winter. He didn't know what the future held. He wasn't ready to make promises or chase happily ever afters. But he was ready for something simpler, to keep showing up, to keep trying, to believe that healing was possible. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Closing dialogue. The next morning, Ron found himself back at the diner. Emily was there, wiping down a table, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. When she saw him, her smile was easy, unforced. Back again, she teased. Couldn't stay away, Ron said. And for once, the words didn't feel heavy. She laughed softly. Coffee. Yeah, he said. And maybe company? Emily paused, then nodded. I think we can manage that. As she poured his coffee, Ron felt something shift. Not a dramatic leap, not a sudden cure, but a quiet step forward. And for now, that was enough.